Welcome, welcome everyone to the first ever two-day IndieBio Demo Day event. My name is Julie Wolf, and I am part of the IndieBio team here in our new office in New York, opened in 2020. That's right, we opened in 2020, a year that is going down in the history books for so many reasons, not least of which are the headlines that we are bombarded with every day, highlighting the need for new biotech innovations. COVID-19 and the lack of proper PPE and testing have highlighted the need for new innovation in the human health space. While wildfires and the tragic loss of biodiversity, which have been exacerbated by man-made climate change, have highlighted the need to heal our planet. If you, like me, sometimes feel a sense of perhaps despair or helplessness when reading your newspaper, this event is for you. Our founders and the technologies they offer today are a beacon of hope and a ray of light that will help to rebuild our planet. IndieBio has, for the past 5 years, invested in companies that are solving some of the biggest problems facing human and planetary health. And it is with that I am extraordinarily proud to present our IndieBio New York inaugural class. We on the IndieBio New York side have not worked alone, of course, and there are some thanks that should be front-loaded in this event. To our colleagues in San Francisco's program, thank you so much for helping us to not only build a program, but to transition to a virtual program and provide our founders with the resources they need at this critical time. To our partners in PF NYC and ESD, that's Partnership for New York City and Empire State Development, thank you for your support and your networks. The business partners that you have connected us with have helped our founders to grow their companies, and the mentor network, which we have expanded into New York City and New York State, have allowed us to connect with mentors, which are a vital part of our IndieBio program. Mentors, thank you for sharing your wisdom, your experience, and your advice to the next generation of founders. So mentors in our audience today, members of PF NYC and ESD, and San Francisco IndieBio, thank you so much for helping us to establish IndieBio here in New York. Just like our founders, we on the IndieBio side have had to pivot and adjust to our new virtual world. That will be reflected in today's program, where each company will be introduced with a short film, followed by a live interview with the CEO. Before we start to introduce the companies and the CEOs, I'd like to introduce you to this virtual space where we will be spending the next little while together as we hear about the biotechnologies of the future. This is obviously quite different for us on the IndieBio side. We're accustomed to filling an auditorium full of people who will remark to one another as a founder presents a prototype or perhaps a really compelling piece of data, and that can lead to an electricity within the audience, which is sadly lacking when we're interacting with a screen. To recapture a tiny bit of that crowd experience, we've added some emojis down below so that when your mind is blown by the things that you're seeing on screen today, feel free to click that button and share your experience with the global community of IndieBio who are all with us today. As you scroll down, you'll see some additional features to help you learn about the founders and their companies. There is the company website, of course, as well as the website on the SOSV portal page. And on that portal page, you'll find even more pieces of information, including interviews, founder stories, and videos where you can learn more about the founders and the companies that they are building. If you are part of our investor community, you should be watching through the investor portal, and it will say that right along the top, investor portal. And there are additional features down below to help you learn more about these companies. The investor deck will provide the details about the technology and the business opportunities being presented today. And very importantly, the Calendly link connects you, the members of our investor network, directly with the CEOs to make an appointment to ask additional questions or to talk about how together you might build the next generation of biotechnologies. As I said at the beginning, my name is Julie, and I'm part of a team here in IndieBio New York. We're a small but close-knit team, and Stephen, Rodrigo, and Alex have been vital to the progress our companies have made in the past 5 months. I'd like to introduce you to IndieBio New York with this short film. Please enjoy.
Hello everybody, welcome to Demo Day at IndieBio in New York. In the middle of a pandemic, there's probably never been a time when life sciences and biology and the impact that they can have on our lives has been so evident. That's why I'm particularly proud of the companies that you're about to see and their mission to solve some of the world's most pressing problems with biology.
This year has been transformative to say the least. However, in Strife we see innovation and opportunity. We've identified two megatrends changing the face of the world. First is in human health, where we see the large baby boomer generation growing into old age, bringing unprecedented healthcare costs. To combat this, we need holistic medical interventions, combining advances in tailored diets, real-time healthcare tracking at the individual and population level, management of our skin, gut and oral microbiomes, as well as new breakthroughs in mental health care, such as AI and psychedelic-assisted psychotherapies. The second megatrend is in planetary health, with climate change already upending the way we make food, energy and materials. Especially interesting is the idea of cultivated fat, which will be critical in creating delicious, sustainable cultivated meat. Another industry ripe for innovation is the textiles industry. And bacterial nanocellulose offers one way to grow customizable, biodegradable clothes at scale and at demand.
I'm Rodrigo, and I'm a partner at IndieBio New York. Building a company is one of the hardest things you can do. Building one during 2020? Well, we've been inspired by the courage and resilience that we've seen in these teams, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank them for allowing us to be part of their journeys.
This past New York class has faced challenges unlike any previously faced by IndieBio cohorts. That's of course due to the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic. A great source of pride for me has been watching them not only form a community with us, the IndieBio team, but amongst themselves, using one another as resources and continuing their relationships even after the program is over.
This is our first one in New York, first one to delivered remotely, and the first one we've ever had to do during a pandemic. And it's the first time we've ever delivered a different kind of demo day for you. I really hope you enjoy what the companies and the team at IndieBio New York have put together for you.
We're Maltus Media, and we make the key ingredient to make cultivated meat affordable and profitable.
Biofin is optimizing ocean nutrients in a way that decreases impact on the environment while increasing the health and nutrient density of farmed fish.
At Biomage, we have built software that allows scientists to explore the multiverse of human cells.
Terra AI is introducing a sustainable and efficient mosquito birth control.
Halamine is creating long-lasting antimicrobial surfaces that will attack all pathogens new and old.
Chi1 works by making the clot form quicker. The less blood you lose, the better off you are and the quicker you can recover from your injury.
Allied Microbiota's Thermo-O bacteria literally eat pollution for lunch.
Every second woman suffers from a urinary tract infection. Brightcu's Intimate Cream restores, replenishes, and revives a woman's natural microbiome.
That trailer is just a taste of some of the companies that we will be showcasing today. I'd like to introduce the first company of IndieBio's New York class. This is a company that is fighting mosquitoes with mosquitoes, Diptera AI.
COVID-19 is disrupting our lives, and the next pandemic may very likely be spread by mosquitoes. Recent studies show that by the year 2050, half of the world population will be living among disease-spreading mosquitoes. As a result, spending on mosquito control in the West is growing exponentially. If they're not already there, mosquitoes who spread dengue, Zika, chikungunya, yellow fever, and more are coming to you. They're spreading fast throughout the US and Europe. Right now, we're spreading toxic chemicals that are hurting us and the environment. And it's not even effective because the mosquitoes are becoming resistant. Diptera AI is introducing a sustainable and efficient mosquito birth control. The idea is to flood an area with sterile male insects, which according to trials reduces the wild population by 95%. Although very successful, implementation of this technique is currently limited to a handful of agricultural pests. Diptera AI's proprietary technology widens the use of the technique to a wide range of insects, including mosquitoes.
All right, so there are a number of ways that are being done today. One, the simplest, is you just take the adult mosquitoes. The adults, the differences between males and females are very clear, and you have a person sitting there and separating them one at a time, which is obviously expensive and very inefficient. There have been some attempts to date in small scale to automate this process. The other approach has to do with some of the differences in size, etc., between males and females during development. The problem with these approaches is that they're very imprecise. Our solution will only affect the specific mosquito being targeted and only where it is being targeted, meaning that we will reduce the number of mosquitoes around the people that they're actually getting sick. We're not going to affect the mosquitoes out in the wild. And in addition to this, in many, many cases, these disease-spreading mosquitoes have invaded from other places. It's an opportunity to not kill off the bees, the butterflies, and all other useful insects, but to not get bitten or contract diseases. So our team brings together knowledge from a number of fields, starting from automation and optics and machine learning through insect biology and business development.
Annual spending on mosquito control is $10 billion. And there's a much bigger untapped market because the existing solutions aren't working. We have strong interest and letters of intent from potential customers. These include a US mosquito control district with an immediate budget of $7 million available for our solution, as well as the largest US mosquito control company. First, we will win the war against mosquitoes. But our long-term goal is to free humanity from both pests and pesticides. If you share this vision, come and join us.
What an inspiring vision to free humanity of pests and pesticides to kick off IndieBio New York's Demo Day. We're joined now by Diptera AI's CEO, Vic Levitine. Hi, Vic.
Hey, Julie.
Now, can you explain a little bit more in detail about the product that Diptera AI will be providing?
Of course. Our product is a highly effective and sustainable mosquito protection based on the sterile insect technique, or SIT. And the idea is to release large numbers of sterile male mosquitoes into the wild, and they will then mate with the females, thus suppressing the population down by 95% according to field trials. And our technology allows offering SIT as a service, where one would get a subscription to receive sterile male mosquitoes delivered directly to him.
And can you remind us what is special about Diptera AI's technology that allows you to offer these sterile male mosquitoes as a service?
Sure. So existing solutions work with adult mosquitoes, and these are both fragile and have a short lifespan, which makes shipping them impractical. And so today you need to build a mosquito factory near every release site, which makes the whole thing crazy expensive. At Diptera AI, we're combining deep biology, computer vision, and automation to have the mosquitoes ready for distribution at a pre-adult stage, when we can ship them from a central facility, thus unlocking economies of scale for SIT.
How will this translate into a business?
So the current spending in the US on mosquito control is $2.5 billion, with $2 billion spent by the private market and another $500 million by the public sector. And because the mosquito problem is currently being not solved, not efficiently solved, and it's also the solutions are also toxic, we estimate at least a $15 billion untapped market in the US alone. And it's based on the fact that out of the 80 million households in the US with private loans, half already infested by mosquitoes, only about 2 million are actually doing something about it. And we are actually offering a sustainable and an effective solution at an affordable price. And our strategy is to start from the mosquito control districts. This is because they're already successfully implementing SIT on agricultural pests, and they have immediately available budgets for mosquito SIT. To that end, we have an LOI from one of the major mosquito control districts in the States. From there, we'll expand over to the residential market, where we have an LOI from Mosquito Authority, one of the biggest mosquito control companies in the US.
I have to ask a question about potential damage to the ecosystem. Have you thought about this working with Diptera AI and how you might address this?
Absolutely. So SIT is only affecting the specific species we are targeting, and only in the area we treat, which is around humans. So mosquitoes will continue living happily in their natural habitats, forests and jungles. And moreover, in most cases, the mosquitoes we are targeting are an invasive species and are not part of the local natural ecosystem.
I see. Now, what are you fundraising and how will you use this to help Diptera AI enable that vision that you left us with in the film?
We're raising $2 million for the upcoming 18 months to hit two major milestones. Complete a trial we have scheduled with a strategic partner and begin an initial rollout with the first paying US customers.
Well, thank you so much, Vic, for answering these questions. For those of you in our investor audience, if you'd like to learn more, please use that Calendly link to make an appointment with Vic today. Thank you, Vic.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Our next company is one that is turning research biologists into bioinformaticians. This is BioMage.
Human body is incredibly complex. It consists of approximately 40 trillion cells. That's more than the number of stars in the Milky Way and the Andromeda Galaxy put together. Every one of those cells has a potential to malfunction, giving rise to diseases such as cancer, cardiovascular disease, or diseases like Alzheimer's. At BioMage, we have built software that allows biomedical researchers to dive into this multiverse of human cells better than any other tool they've ever used before. Single-cell sequencing allows researchers to interrogate individual cells to study their gene expression signatures. While the answers to many fundamental questions in biology actually can be answered with the help of a single-cell dataset, there's one fundamental problem, which is that currently research biologists are poorly equipped to find these answers. These datasets are huge and they are difficult to understand without specific expertise in data science and in bioinformatics, and that's something that biologists lack at the moment. Most importantly, research bioinformaticians are currently so overworked. They simply have to refuse to analyze many datasets. In essence, billions of dollars of value in the form of new drug targets and more effective treatment choices remain buried under a mountain of sequencing data. The BioMage single-cell platform empowers researchers to perform end-to-end analysis of their single-cell RNA-seq sequencing data. The data processing component guides users through the essential cell filtering steps, including the removal of empty droplets by cell size distribution, The data exploration component then allows researchers to rapidly gain meaningful insight into their dataset. Common visualization tools such as UMAP embedding and marker heat maps are shown by default, enabling researchers to visualize their data in a single click. Finally, the plots and tables component displays a range of plot options, with standard plots such as the UMAP embedding showing clusters preloaded with user data. Currently, a typical single-cell project costs tens of thousands of dollars to carry out and about between 3 and 6 months. The BioMage single-cell analysis platform empowers research biologists to analyze their own single-cell sequencing data without having to rely on the external expertise of a research bioinformatician. Reception of our product has been overwhelmingly positive. We've partnered with several institutions, several leading academic institutions, and our biggest customer is Harvard Medical School. When BioMage succeeds, the world will become a better place because we'll be able to discover new drug targets for the diseases that are affecting us much faster, solving such fundamental diseases like cancer, cardiovascular disease, and diseases like Alzheimer's. Our vision for the future is a world where every single research bioinformatician, whether they work in the United States or the UK or India or China, can affordably access a world-class single-cell data analytics solution that they can use to discover new drug targets and to enable precision medicine.
We're now joined by CEO of BioMage, Adam Kirkowitz. Hi, Adam.
Hi, Julie. Happy to be here.
Adam, you know, I love that poetic analogy of the multiverse, where each of us contain 40 billion stars or cells that now research scientists, can interpret the same way that bioinformaticians can. Can you talk a little bit about the research scientists who you anticipate will be your first customers and how that will expand going forward?
Sure, it's actually not just will be, but actually they already are. So at BioMage, we've run a number of successful pilots with several leading research institutions, universities, and our largest paying customer is Harvard Medical School. So we've definitely got a little bit of the traction going on already, and we think that in the short term, it's going to be the academic market. That's our focus. We estimate that market to be worth to BioMage, to create opportunities for BioMage in the realm of about $100 million ARR in terms of kind of annual value, annual contract value. When we're able to expand into a kind of larger market, such as pharmaceutical companies and large government-led single cell projects, population projects, we estimate the opportunity for BioMage to be much larger, and in terms of the annual contract value, we estimate it to be about $500 million. So that's our traction and our trajectory at the moment.
Yeah, it's wonderful to hear that you already have customers. I wonder if they've given you feedback, and if so, how that will build into the next iteration of your product.
Yeah, absolutely. So the feedback we've got from our users has been overwhelmingly positive. One of the users of our product told us that what they were able to do at the platform took them 9 months of learning bioinformatics and of installing packages and carrying out an analysis on their data set, and actually using our product, they were able to do it in just a couple of hours of using the graphical user interface. So the feedback has been really positive. The users we've spoken with have highlighted a number of features that we have to implement in order for the product to achieve a broader appeal. Luckily, these are almost always the same features that come up in all of our customer studies. We're planning. We've got a plan. We've got a contractual obligation to actually deliver those features, and we are planning to do that by April 2021.
I see. Now, could you add a little more detail to that timeline for product iteration, and perhaps talk about when you might have a product that would be available to some of those pharma customers that you mentioned at the beginning?
Sure, absolutely. So the April 2021 timeline, that's for the availability of our of the kind of open beta. That's when we will stop running private pilot projects and let every researcher start using our platform. The kind of broader roadmap moving into pharmaceutical industry that will require adding additional features, particularly around data security and compliance. And we estimate that that's a kind of larger milestone that will take another 2 years to implement after our open beta release.
And are you fundraising right now? And if so, what will you use those funds to help BioMH grow?
Sure. So actually, we've just closed our seed round. We've signed a kind of pre-final agreement that will allow us to receive the funding. Our current focus is actually mostly on hiring right now. So we're hiring. That's our primary focus in the company. We're hiring software engineers and bioinformaticians who will help us deliver that open beta that we're planning to deliver by April 2021. But in terms of conversations with investors, we are interested to have conversations that could potentially lead to a Series A fundraise. So if there are any investors in the audience who like to invest in biotech or software companies, then I'll be very open to have a conversation. But we will not be fundraising for another 12 to 18 months.
Noted. And thank you for adding the call to action for me. If you and our investor network would like to speak with Adam, his Calendly link is down below. Be sure to make your appointment today. Thank you so much, Adam, for answering these questions.
Yeah, thanks so much, Julie.
Our next company is one that is creating better feed for better fish. This is BioFin.
For millennia, people have been farming on land, but it's really only in the past 40 years that people have started farming in the sea. We don't really eat wild animals on land anymore, in part because we ate them all. And so there's an opportunity to stop that in the ocean before we eat all of them too. However, fish farming is industrializing at an incredible pace. With that come challenges. At the moment, about half of all fish that we eat come from farms. On the surface, that seems like a great statistic, but on diving deeper, you start to see the reality of fish farming. There are problems with pollution, disease, and animal stress. It's not uncommon for entire farms to be lost to an outbreak or contaminant. Compounding the problem is what farmers use to keep these fish healthy. Medicine and feed are both expensive and resource intense. When farmed fish die, all of this goes down the drain, or rather, into the ocean, which is even worse. Aquaculture is at the moment a $180 billion market, and in the next 10 years, that will be closer to $300 billion. Almost half of the costs and resources that go into fish farming are related to fish food. And so if you want to start making farming better, you've got to start with better feed. Unfortunately, farmed fish simply can't eat like wild fish, and so we must maximize the nutritional quality of marine ingredients these fish do eat. Things like omega-3s, vitamins, and minerals. They're incredibly expensive and inefficiently used. BioFin will make existing nature-based solutions better. We've developed a specialized method that protects marine ingredients and amplifies their effects. With our technology, we can increase absorption and bioavailability of nutrients and medicines, improve their health and nutritional benefit, and reduce the amount needed. And we can make many of these improvements tenfold. We're encapsulating our ingredients in 100% biodegradable, generally recognized as safe ingredients. Many of these, in fact, come from the marine environment themselves. This system of encapsulation reduces pollution in 3 ways. Number 1, the encapsulation protects the ingredients as they're integrated into the feed and before they leak out into the water. Number 2, it enables better absorption and bioavailability in the fish, so less nutrient waste is passed through the fish and excreted into the environment. And number 3, it keeps these fish from dying. And as a result, you have lower mortality and less mortality-associated pollution in the marine environment. I'm a medical doctor and environmental scientist. My two co-founders are a molecular biologist and a materials engineer. We're approaching this from the world of human biomedicine, where the science is cutting edge, but it's very locked up in expensive research facilities. We're opening that up and making it available to the world of fish farming. Biofin products have direct benefits for everyone along the aquaculture value chain. By upgrading the feed technology, we're upgrading the industry and ultimately the quality of fish. In August of 2020, $630 million worth of salmon farming permits were sold in Norway alone. There are many new solutions in the marine space, and we can work with most of them. New ingredient companies, analytics, entirely new types of facilities and farming. Our technology adds value across this ecosystem. Biofin-fed fish are guaranteed to consumers that they'll be getting the most omega-rich, nutrient-packed, environmentally friendly fish on the market.
We're now joined by the CEO of Biofin, Timmy Boulay. Hi, Timmy.
Hey, Julie. Thanks for having me.
Now, it seems from the film that Biofin's technology is one that will benefit all players in this space, the consumers, the farmers, and the feed producers. But there are many people who are working in this aquatech space. So can we start by talking about how Biofin differentiates itself from others in the aquatech space?
Yeah, well, that's a really great question. What differentiates us is that we can operate at scale without the typical infrastructure constraints associated with a billion-dollar business. Our technology is tiny. We're literally operating at the nano to micro level. You only need 1 kilogram of Biofin product to integrate into 1 metric ton of feed. That's a ratio of 1 to 1,000. Because there's already been so much money invested in this technology in biomedicine as well, we can replicate it at very low cost while preserving the effect and translating the impact.
What is your first product and how has customer discovery guided that decision?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. So our first product will be a fine and encapsulated ingredient. Without going into too many details, we'll say that we are encapsulating several. Each are high-value ingredients that have immediate benefits to fish health as well as human health. One of these ingredients is omega-3s. Everyone knows this is why people eat fish, right? But what people don't realize is that there's a very complicated environmental narrative associated with procuring them. Many of them come from wild-caught fish, and so there's a real environmental cost to their use. But there are other ways of producing these and procuring these that don't require fish, and we want to optimize the use of these, thus guaranteeing nutrient content in fish and, of course, sustainability in the environment.
Now, what is the timeline for the production of your first product, and how do regulations come into play? I imagine there's a certain regulatory path you have to follow with this product.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a feed technology just like many others out there, and so we need to pay careful attention to that, right? So we're in the lab now, and we're moving into live animal testing this fall. Our biggest hurdles are indeed the regulatory barriers, and we estimate that it'll take us 18 to 24 months to overcome these. That being said, we have shortcuts to revenues, so investors in the audience get in touch and we'll tell you our secrets.
And you mentioned that you're in the lab. Can you describe what your most significant technical milestone has been during the IndieBio program?
Yeah, well, we really achieved so much. IndieBio has been tremendous for us, so huge shout out to all of you. Thank you for the 4 or 5 months of support, really appreciate it. There are two sort of standout sort of metrics of performance that we've had over these past months. One is that we have scaled the developments of our fines and demonstrated therapeutic effect of our technology in cell lines. So we know this technology works. And two, we have successfully integrated our fines, these enhanced ingredients, into a feed pellet, which is really a non-trivial step. So feed is produced under high temperatures and pressures, and so whatever goes in needs to be able to withstand these stresses. And we believe we figured it out.
What are you fundraising now, and how will you use those funds to grow Biofin?
Well, we intend to be the company that bridges the divide between the latest in Silicon Valley and Cambridge-funded biotechnology with sustainable aquaculture. To do this, we need 2.5 million US dollars, and this money will be used to achieve several aims. The first is to demonstrate the performance of our fines against critical industry metrics like FCR, survival, and nutrient content. Secondly, we need to move our fines through the feed additive approval process. And thirdly, and importantly, we need to establish BioFin as the leading fish nutrient company for both customers and end consumers.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Timmy, for taking the time to answer these questions today. If you and our investor audience would like to learn more about BioFin and the opportunity presented, please do make an appointment using the Calendly down below. Thanks, Timmy.
Thanks so much, Julie.
Our next company is one that is reviving, replenishing, and restoring the woman's natural intimate microbiome. This is BrightCure.
UTIs are not just like a normal headache. I mean, if you have a UTI, you have this crazy burning sensation in your bladder, which you cannot ignore. You need to go peeing all the time. It hurts so badly when you pee. It has a massive effect also on your daily life, on your relationships, on the way you eat, because it's such a stressful experience as well. Obviously, you're kind of like traumatized. So actually 70% of women who have these recurrent infections also have depression. Clinicians are aware that UTIs are a problem, that they're becoming more and more difficult to treat, that people have to be more hospitalized. A lot of women take these probiotic supplements. They need to pass a lot of metabolic barriers in order to arrive at your intimate area. So in terms of vaginal health, you want to have the gram-positive bacteria, which live in your intimate area in your vagina. You have also gram-negative bacteria, which are associated with these recurrent infections. Gram-negative bacteria are, for example, also chlamydia, are gonorrhea, but are also these UTI bacteria like E. coli bacteria. The bad bacteria start colonizing the vaginal flora, they start colonizing your intimate area, and by colonizing your intimate area, they cause these recurrent infections. Because you end up in the cycle of constantly getting these infections, constantly taking these antibiotics, is that you destroy your natural protective barrier for your bladder, which then reinforces and promotes even these infections even more. So antibiotics are really bad because they're basically like an atomic bomb. Our solution is very unique because it allows for a very targeted killing. This organism that we have identified selectively kills these gram-negative bad bacteria, while it does not harm in any way the gram-positive ones. So for me, it was really important that patients can help themselves, and it gives the power and the control back to the patients to take care of their intimate health and to be in control about it, and to have this solution, this cream, easily accessible for these UTI patients to buy it over the counter. We started building this community also to educate UTI patients, and it's great to have these women reaching out to us to also work on our products and try to develop their best product possible. A lot of women are actively searching for a solution, so I think they feel really, really happy that someone is actually doing this, and then someone is doing it that also understands them and knows how it feels and knows how it impacts them as well. I hope that you can join us to support BrightCure, to promote a healthy vaginal flora, raise awareness for these UTI patients, and stop the suffering of millions of women around the world.
We're now joined by the CEO of BrightCure, Chiara Heidi. Hi, Chiara.
Hi, Julie. Hi, everyone.
Now, Chiara, the film makes it clear that your patient experience has played a vital part of the BrightCure journey. And it's very important to you to empower women to take their healthcare into their hands and have this be a product that they have access to. So let's start by talking about how this product will be sold and how regulations have played a part in this path.
Yeah, sure. So we are launching our vaginal cream actually as a cosmeceutical product, so as a consumer health product onto the market. And we actively chose this regulatory pathway to allow to launch our cream actually already next year, which is super exciting. And despite being a consumer health product, although our technology is backed up by decades of scientific research from world-leading institutions, and we also actually partner, our approach is very science-driven, obviously being a scientist myself. We're also currently planning clinical trials to conduct them early next year with our prototype.
And can you add a little more detail around the timeline for product development and release?
Yeah, sure. So as I just said, we're basically in the final steps of putting our organism, our freeze-dried organism and the formulation together. And then given on current estimates, we hopefully have a prototype ready. We already have a wait list of women waiting for the product to trial it. And then hopefully we can do the clinical testing early next year and then launch our product end of next year.
And what is the market size, either in Europe or in the US, where you plan to launch your product?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a huge market. Every second woman, as we saw in the video, is suffering from UTIs. And the total UTI costs globally are 8.6 billion every year. In UK, the healthcare services spend $500 million only on treating the emergency admissions. So it's a huge market, and it's a growing market because these UTI bacteria are becoming more and more difficult to treat.
And in that film, we saw a couple of graphs which represent the scientific progress that you've made, but maybe you can accentuate and add some detail to the milestones that you've made in the IndieBio program.
Yeah, we're actually really, really proud of our team because we made quite a lot of progress, which is really exciting. So we basically completed successfully the efficacy study, so we could show that our organism selectively actually kills these bad UTI bacteria that I was describing in the video, and does not in any way harm the good bacteria that constitute a healthy vaginal flora. So that's really exciting. We were also working on the manufacturing, so we developed a freeze-drying technology. We can see that our organism is very stable in powder form, where we can reconstitute it and activate it. And now we're basically in the final preparations for getting our prototype ready. So designing the formulation, finalizing the formulation to then basically put both building blocks together.
And what are you fundraising, and how will you use this to help solve the UTI problem for millions of women around the world?
Yeah, so we're actually fundraising at the moment. We've started talking to interested investors. So for everyone who's keen, please get in touch. We're raising $1.4 million now, and this is for scaling up our technology to get it ready for our product launch, also to expand the team for our product launch, to prepare a product launch, and also to conduct the clinical testing to basically underline, to expand our claims and underline the efficacy of our technology.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Chiara, for taking time to answer some questions today.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me.
If you'd like to speak with Chiara about BrightCure and the opportunity that she's talked about, please do make an appointment down below using the Calendly link on BrightCure. Our next company is one that is facilitating the growth of the cultivated meat market. This next company is Multus Media.
The world's population is growing, and so is its appetite for meat. As a result, we're dedicating an ever-increasing amount of land, water, and energy to raise livestock. But this is simply not sustainable. Cultivated meat is a new way of making real meat just without the animal. So what you do is just grow the fat and muscle cells that are required for the end product, and growing meat this way actually releases up to 87% fewer greenhouse gases and uses just a fraction of the land and water.
Conventional meat can contain different diseases and viruses and bacteria, but cultivated meat will just contain the meat cells, which is cellularly the same. Also, you can design the composition of fat and muscle ratio, you can design the different amino acids you want it to include.
So you may ask, why can't we buy it already? This is a question that my co-founders and I were asking ourselves a few years ago, and to answer it, we we went to research how cultivated meat is actually grown. To make cultivated meat, you need 3 key components. First, you need a sample of animal stem cells. Then what's called a growth medium provides the nutrients required to grow these stem cells into the meat. And finally, just like we see in the brewing industry, large fermentation tanks are then used to scale production and meet demand. What we found was that the key challenge holding back this entire industry is the cost of feeding the cells. This growth medium makes up over 80% of production costs. Current solutions were just never designed for the food industry. Companies are using fetal bovine serum, and that actually is derived from pregnant cows during the slaughtering process. And clearly this goes totally against the ethical and sustainability aspirations of the cultivated meat industry, and we knew there'd be a better solution. What we're making at Multismedia is a completely animal-free replacement to blood serum that is designed specifically for the cultivated meat industry. We test thousands of growth media recipes to make sure that we are achieving consistent performance across multiple cell lines. So what we're doing in-house is actually using a protein engineering platform that we've developed to maintain the core active component of these proteins, but actually enhance specific performance characteristics to make them more suitable for large-scale production. We're developing and streamlining our ingredient production and mixing using existing infrastructure from the brewing and biopharmaceutical industries. This way, we can leverage contract manufacturers to reach scale across the world and drive down costs. Cultivated meat is still in its infancy and is broadly unknown to the wider public. But recently, there's been a dramatic shift in consumer appetite for meat alternatives. With a core focus on growth media development, we are enabling profitable scale-up for leading cultivated meat companies and lowering entry barriers for new innovators to drive this space forward. In summary, at Multismedia, we're making cultivated meat the affordable and sustainable solution.
What a great overview of how Multismedia will help facilitate the growth of the cultivated meat industry and allow us to find cultivated meat in our grocery stores. I'm joined now by Kai Linton, the CEO of Multismedia. Hi, Kai.
Hi, Julie. It's great to be here.
Now, in the film, you mentioned Proliferum M is your first product. And I wonder if you could add some detail here about your product development timeline and possible customer feedback.
Sure. So Proliferum M is a true animal-free serum replacement that is designed to grow mammalian stem cells. Beyond this, in our further product catalog, we'll be developing similar products then for avian cells, so for companies working with chicken and duck products, then also tackling seafood as well down the line. In terms of how that timeline will look, so actually right at the end of our product development with Proliferum M and ready to send out early samples by the end of this year to our closer partners, which will then take to scale up by autumn next year and actually commercialize that. In terms of then the other products, then avian cells are our next focus, and then seafood will come after that.
And am I right in thinking that M stands for mammalian, and perhaps we will see a Proliferum A and Proliferum, whatever types of the cells are going forward?
Yes, that's right. M is for mammalian cells. So those companies are working with beef and pork products.
And this market size for cultivated meat is one that is growing. So I wonder if you could add some detail to this market and others that you might tap into using the same technology.
Absolutely. So we actually have 3 different revenue streams to tackle the cultivated meat space. And although cultivated meat products aren't available on the market today, there's this growing demand for growth media, as many of these companies are now beginning to develop their production process and then scale that to bring their product to market over the next couple of years. So first we'll have this catalog of serum replacements that I just described, but actually also we've developed this entire media development pipeline that enables us to test thousands of different formulations every week. So really we could offer that as an additional service on top of these formulations, and also those proteins that we've engineered, as I mentioned in the video. These are an additional ingredient in our growth media that we could sell to companies. So right now we estimate the market for growth media by 2024 will be over $700 million in value, and that will grow steadily actually to just shy of $25 billion by 2030.
And just to emphasize the technical milestones that you've met during this program, you've screened thousands, as you mentioned, of different media and recipes. Can you talk about the milestone that you've made with Proliferum M?
Yes, we've been super busy over these past 5 months, and I'm really proud of the progress that our team has made. So in screening all these formulations, Proliferum M right now is at a stage where it's about 80% in terms of performance compared to the gold standard of animal-based growth media. So right now, all we're doing is making some final iterations on the consistency of that performance before sending those out for customer testing, validation, and feedback by the end of this year.
And how much is Multis Media currently fundraising, and how will you use those funds to grow the company?
We currently have a $2 million note open right now, and that will give us runway for the next 18 months to bring Proliferum M to market and expand our product catalog into avian cells, as mentioned before. So I'd love to speak to any investors that are interested in joining this.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Kai, for taking time to answer a few questions about Multis Media today.
Thanks, Julie.
Now, if you're interested in speaking with Kai and learning more about how you can facilitate the growth of the cultivated meat industry through Multis Media, make an appointment using that Calendly link directly down below. Our next company is one that is turning almost any surface into an antimicrobial surface. This is Halamine.
High-touch surfaces like doorknobs and elevator buttons are how we interact with the world and the people who have touched them before us. Would you be satisfied if your sunscreen only lasted for 15 minutes? Probably not. So why are we satisfied when our disinfectants only give us 15 minutes worth of protection from the transmission of deadly pathogens? High-touch surfaces account for a significant portion of hospital-acquired infections that kill more people than breast cancer and prostate cancer combined each year. The WHO has estimated that by 2050, 10 million people will die a year of drug-resistant pathogens. And I don't have time to talk about foodborne pathogens and food safety. Hi, I'm Ted Eveleth, the CEO of Halamine. I'm a serial entrepreneur with 30 years of experience growing startup companies. About 2 years ago, I ran across a group that was developing antimicrobial coatings that I thought could change the way we think about disinfectants. The way that we disinfect hasn't changed for over 100 years, but my co-founder, Dr. Chow, invented a new product that modernizes the way we disinfect, and we do that by making a good thing better. Chlorine has long been known as an effective biocide. We use it in our drinking water, in our pools, in our laundry, and in our cleaners. The only drawback of chlorine is that it doesn't last on a surface for very long. So Halamine's first product, HaloFilm, allows you to take the same level of chlorine that you'd find in a pool and put it on almost any surface for as long as a month. That means HaloFilm treated surfaces are as safe to touch as water in a swimming pool, but are deadly to pathogens. Bacteria that land on HaloFilm treated surfaces are killed in under 10 minutes, and mold is deterred for as long as 30 days. How does it work? Well, simply, HaloFilm sprayed on a surface before a chlorine-containing cleaning product holds onto the chlorine at just the right concentrations to be deadly to microbes and safe for us. HaloFilm creates a transparent film on surfaces that act like glue for chlorine. It adds a mere 30 seconds to your cleaning regimen, but 30 days of protection. You can maintain the chlorine with repeated application of disinfectant, but HaloFilm does not build up, so you will never exceed safe limits of chlorine on that surface. And it provides protection that you can see. So in the same way that you test for chlorine in a pool, you can test for chlorine on your surface. So when we started talking to customers, they were concerned about C. diff, which is a bacteria. They're also concerned about Candida auris, which is a fungus that's resistant to the 3 classes of antifungal drugs. Now, Candida auris has a 50% mortality rate in 90 days. So you can imagine we are in the global fight against infectious disease, and we have a number of pathogens that are developing resistance. So the problem is only going to get worse as these resistant pathogens develop and grow. So we need to have better protection as we lose the benefit of antibiotics. We're running out of our best defense, so we need to come up with some new ones. Halamine is developing antimicrobial products that provide long-term protection against a variety of pathogens. We're looking for a world where your disinfectants last longer than your deodorants. We hope you'll join us.
What a great and timely product, as I think disease transmission is something that's on the top of all of our minds lately. We're joined now by CEO of Halamine, Ted Eveleth. Hi, Ted. So I think that there are many different potential applications that we could see for something like HaloFilm. Could you talk about what the first application is that you see for something like HaloFilm going forward? And I also believe you might need to unmute yourself.
We segment the market into 4 areas: food, institutional, health, and consumer. Now, each segment has different pathogens of interest and different value propositions. The first initial target for sustained sales and marketing effort are food and institutional. And by institutional, I mean mass transit, schools, cruise ships, or office buildings. And we're targeting food because of food safety and the product loss due to mold, and institutional mainly because of heightened concerns around COVID-19, but we try not to emphasize any applications that are pandemic specific because someday, hopefully this will all pass. Now our biggest market, health, and hospitals where we hope to reduce hospital-acquired infections will be a later market for us because we have to acquire more data on efficacy for a longer list of pathogens.
And what is the timeline for release of HaloFilm with this application?
So we've already sampled a number of potential customers and strategic partners. We anticipate early next year to have product for a regional rollout, during which we'll establish some initial sales, do some pilot studies and white papers, confirm some key customers, and acquire purchase orders before we do a national launch towards the middle of next year.
And in terms of your first customer, do you have any insights into who that may be?
Well, so 2 prototypical customers might be Earth Bio, who performs contract cleaning services for kitchens in the Chipotle and McDonald's franchisees, and Janitronics, who provides janitorial services to New York State government buildings. Now we're targeting service providers because with one customer for us, we can reach hundreds of end users.
I see. How have regulatory restrictions or guidelines guided your path to market with HaloFilm?
Well, part of the reason for the regional rollout is the need to register the product with 10 states that regulate our type of project, which is an adjuvant. Now, we're not regulated at the federal level because we're not a disinfectant per se. We just make a disinfectant last longer. We'd also like to add food contact surface approval to our list of available uses before a national rollout. We've been working over the last year with a great regulatory consulting firm, TSG Consulting, and we're comfortable with where we are and the timeline that I put out. Now, I should also add that we are now one of 5 products that have ever passed the existing residual self-sanitizer test, and believe we will be the only product that can pass the newly published residual antimicrobial coating product testing protocol. So regulation really kind of cuts both ways.
Yeah, well, congratulations on that major milestone of the RSS, passing the RSS test. My final question, what are you fundraising and how will you use that to help Halamine turn all surfaces into antimicrobial surfaces?
Sure. Well, since joining IndieBio, we've raised almost $2 million from investors and grants. We plan to raise a Series A of about $3 to $5 million in advance of our national launch. That round should get us to about a $2 million run rate, where we think that cheaper forms of growth capital should be available. Now we're looking to raise that money as soon as we can. We have 2 customers that think that they can buy our entire first production run, and we don't want to risk the cash flow to make that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ted, for answering these questions today and taking the time.
you.
Now, if you are interested in listening to, in making an appointment with Ted, please do use that Calendly link down below to make that appointment today. Our next company is one that is using microbes to turn brownfields into green fields. This is Allied Microbiota.
Did you know that the same industrial processes that created jobs and economic growth also left behind a legacy of soil contaminated with probable carcinogens? Did you know that some of that soil is right here in our own backyard? Less than 30 miles from New York City, industrial processes contaminated the soil and groundwater for decades with dozens of contaminants that threaten the water supply of this densely populated area. But it also really distresses the land value. And so what happens is these sites typically abandon. So a site that once created possibly thousands of jobs sits empty, and that has a huge impact on a community. There are over 450,000 brownfield sites, contaminated sites in the US, and they contain over 100 billion tons of toxic soil. And yet less than 0.1% of that soil is being treated due to cost. The soil has to either be excavated, taken someplace and buried, or treated with energy-intensive chemical or thermal processes. There has to be a better way. Allied Microbiota uses microbes to clean contaminants from soil. And our microbes have shown groundbreaking results against compounds like those polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, PHAs, dioxins, and chlorinated compounds. With the support from the National Science Foundation and New York's Clean Energy Business Incubator program, we've moved that technology out of the university to our lab here at the Advanced Energy Research Center, where we've shown that our technology works. We've shown in the lab that we can take PCB levels down below 50 part per million, and that's a key regulatory threshold that allows the soil to be safely landfilled. But we're not stopping there. We're working hard to get the PCB levels down below 1 ppm. And at that point, the soil can be safely reused, solving the problem, not burying it. Thermo-O is a natural microbe, and this microbe really fantastic. They can not only survive in these toxins, but they kind of eat them for lunch, using their metabolic processes to break down these toxic compounds into harmless substances. We're often told that the solution is to dig up the soil, transport it hundreds of miles, and bury it. That doesn't solve the problem. It just relocates it and buries it. When we say that we can solve the problem, we're told that it'll be too expensive and too slow. We disagree. Our microbes can degrade environmental contaminants faster and cheaper than existing remediation technologies. Communities shouldn't have to choose between jobs and a clean environment. I want our generation and the next to feel safe eating food grown in their garden, eating the fish that they catch, and drinking water from their tap.
What a great tagline to use microbes to turn brownfields into green fields. We are joined now by the CEO of Allied Microbiota, Laura Lynn Kortz. Hi, Laura Lynn.
Hi, Julie. It's great to be here.
I think where I'd like to start with questions for you, because this is such a large problem as highlighted in the film, is how you will take this amazing Thermo-O microbe and get it into market. Who will your customers be? And how are you going to break into the soil remediation industry already in place?
That's a really great question, Julie. At Allied Microbiota, we're blessed and cursed by the fact that our technology has such a broad range of applications. from soil contaminants like polychlorobiphenyls, PCBs, and polyaromatic hydrocarbons, to water contaminants like 1,4-dioxane and dioxins, to industrial off-gases like formaldehyde. In fact, we issued our first commercial invoice for air contaminants during our time at IndieBio and received multiple samples of water contaminants from interested customers. However, our hard work at customer discovery during the IndieBio program showed us the huge size of the soil market and the regulatory drive to clean it up. Government regulations are forcing landowners to clean contaminated soil before the property can be sold or developed. For this reason, we're going to focus initially on excavated soil contaminated with one of the toughest contaminants, PCBs. Tough that is, except for our product, Thermo-O, which eats it for lunch. And after that, we're going to move to decontaminating the soil on site. Initially, we're going to work with partners, environmental engineering firms, to de-risk our technology before working directly with the customer, the landowners.
What additional insights can you give us into the soil market that you mentioned you discovered through your IndieBio customer discovery process? And how will you compete cost-wise with the existing technologies?
Yeah, the soil market is really massive. Over $8 billion a year is spent to clean up contaminated soil. And that's just in the US. And that's just the excavated soil. The go-to solution right now is typically excavating and landfilling the soil, which can cost, depending on the level of contaminants in the soil, anywhere from $50 to over $200 per ton. And that's just the tipping fees, not to mention the cost of excavating the soil and transporting it. Successful on-site treatments include chemical and thermal processes, but they can cost over $300 to $500 per ton. Working with a commercial partner, we successfully treated tons of soil and showed that our technology works and that we could access 1 billion of that $8 billion soil market right now. And based on this study, we were able to show that our Thermo-O process could treat contaminated soil at the cost of $60 per ton. And that makes it competitive today for PCB-laden soil that's destined for TSCA-regulated Class C landfills, which cost about $200 per ton. However, as we scale up and move our production process out of the lab to a commercial facility, we'll be able to take those costs down to about $20 per ton. And by treating the soil on site, we'll be competitive with Class D landfills, which cost about $50 per ton. And at that point, it's an easy decision for our customers to make, to clean up the contaminants rather than bury them.
Cost competitive and more sustainable. It's a winning combination. Now, your technology is rooted in bioremediation, a field that's been around for decades, really. So I'd like to hear how Allied Microbiota is different than previous companies working in this space. And since you mentioned that Thermo-O is a natural microbe, if you could incorporate how you will protect your intellectual property, that would be great.
Yeah, that's a great question. You're right, Julie. Bioremediation has been around for a long time, but we've never seen a microbe like Thermo-O. It's really an amazing microbe that's supercharged by heat and oxygen, which empower it to break down the toughest contaminants in weeks to months. Traditional remediation practices typically take years to decades. Compounding that problem, most microbes can only tackle a narrow range of contaminants, and oftentimes can only break them down partway. That means that multiple steps are required to decontaminate the soil. Thermo-O, by contrast, can tackle a broad range of contaminants from PCBs to PHAs to 1,4-dioxane, and it breaks them down quickly into harmless cellular building blocks. And you're right, Thermo-O is a natural microbe, and we plan on protecting P by developing these IP-protected remediation modules, essentially black boxes, which contain our microbe and an IP-protected nutrient cocktail. In addition, we're developing microbe delivery vehicles to increase our product's efficacy and to strengthen our IP position. So we already have one patent that we're licensing from Columbia University, and during our time at IndieBio, we filed 2 additional provisional patents assigned to allied microbiota.
All right. I think my final question here is, what are you fundraising and how will you use this to take Thermo-O to all of the contaminated soils?
Yeah, we're looking at $1.5 million to supplement our funding from the National Science Foundation and New York State's Clean Energy Research and Development Authority. And we want to use those funds to develop and deploy a Thermo-O remediation unit that can decontaminate excavated soil. This module can be deployed at the site of contamination or as a unit of operation at a commercial soil handling facility. In addition, we want to develop and deploy a Thermo-O remediation process that can decontaminate the soil at the site of contamination without needing to excavate the soil. And we also want to improve our production process and increase the specific activity of our product. So these steps will allow us to decrease our costs, increase our margin, and accelerate our ability to remove contaminants.
Well, thank you very much, Laura Lynn, for answering my questions today. And thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Julie.
If you would like to speak with Laura Lynn to learn more about allied microbiota, please use the Calendly link down below in order to make your appointment today. Our next company is one that is finding a very unique way to treat the problem of extreme bleeding situations. This is Cayuga Biotech.
Bleeding is probably the biggest health threat that nobody really focuses on. Within the US alone, it's the leading cause of death for people aged 1 to 44. And at all times of your life, it's a severe problem. Younger adults typically happens trauma, things like car accidents. And then as you get older, and typically you end up on these anticoagulants like Plavix, it becomes sort of more of these internal bleeding that kind of leaks rather than a massive injury. Even if it's not severe, it can have major effects on your quality of life. So my PhD is in material science. Typically this has been purely the field of biology. Most of the drugs are based around recombinant factors in the clotting cascade. And so they're proteins, they're very expensive to produce. They have to be stored either frozen -20, potentially -80. And so the really exciting thing with materials is that one, it's very stable, but also using these materials as catalysts rather than key components of the clotting cascade, we think that we can have a more targeted effect on bleeding. So Cayuga's lead candidate is Chi-1. In the bloodstream, it targets a specific coagulation factor called thrombin, and thrombin's produced later stage in coagulation, and its job is essentially to put the platelet and fibrin brick and mortar into the clot that stops the bleed. And so Chi-1's job, once there's thrombin, it accelerates the rate of that thrombin formation and gets thrombin to put that brick and mortar wall up together quicker. With Chi-1, we can really simplify treatment, combine it with blood products, some of the treatments that are out there, provide a cocktail that has much better prognosis for patients. So to date, we have done a rat trauma model, a pig trauma model that was funded by DARPA, and most recently with IndieBio, we just completed a rat Plavix model. And so in each of these studies, what we've seen is that Chi-1 is fast acting. You're able to stop bleeding within 5 minutes. We've also had significant reduction of blood loss in all of these models. So imagine bleeding like a leaky pipe. The first thing you want to do is to plug that leak. So Chi-1's job is to get that plug in there much quicker, and that reduces the amount of blood that's lost, and that can be the difference between life and death.
What a compelling explanation of the need to treat bleeding with better modalities. I don't know if I'll ever look at sriracha quite the same. We're joined now by Cayuga Biotech CEO, Damian Cadella. Hi, Damian.
Hey, Julie, happy to be here.
Now, you mentioned in the film that there are different drugs available to treat these extreme bleeding episodes. Can you explain how those differ from Kai-1?
So currently, the FDA has approved drugs like Indexa and Kcentra, and the biggest issue with them comes down to safety. So all these drugs have a black box label warning, which states that if used, they can cause unwanted clotting or thrombosis. The reason this happens is that most of these drugs are recombinant factors of the clotting cascade. And so if you keep adding factors to a bleeding patient, you can overcorrect and cause this unwanted clotting. So Cayuga Biotech with Kai-1, what we're trying to do is take a polymer that actually acts as a clotting catalyst and use it to accelerate the body's natural clotting process. So it's really a much more targeted effect or targeted mechanism that has a similar effectiveness without that overcorrection.
I see. And there are, of course, many different patient populations who would benefit from Kai-1. What's the first indication that you are using as your go-to-market strategy?
Right. So you're correct. In the US alone, there are over 500,000 bleeding episodes each year that are severe enough to require emergency care. So we've targeted the reversal of the antiplatelet drug Plavix or clopidogrel. So that alone accounts for over 100,000 of these cases. And most importantly, it's really an unmet need. Within this market or indication, doctors really have very limited choices that are ineffective at best. And so the FDA has an accelerated approval program for serious conditions that are essentially unmet, and that can accelerate our approval process significantly. So that's why we're going with Plavix first. Even though that's already $1 billion market, we can add several other $1 billion markets in anticoagulant reversal as well as rare bleeding disorders.
What is the major technical milestone that makes you optimistic that this was a good decision to use this Plavix reversal?
So we were actually able to do our first killer experiment with Plavix thanks to IndieBio. So previously we had raised about $2 million from the DoD. Been very successful, but IndieBio's money was our first test in rats that were actually dosed with Plavix, and our results were excellent. Kai-1 significantly improved survival rates following an injury, and it did this by significantly reducing the bleeding time following the injury. That led to less blood loss overall, which then enabled more rats to survive. So we're really excited about that, and hopefully off to the races with our preclinical and to get into the clinical quickly.
A therapeutic company, preclinical therapeutic company, I should say, like Cayuga, has several major milestones ahead of it. What is the timeline? Can you add some detail here?
Sure. So the three major milestones for any company like Cayuga, it's the IND, the completion of the first in human trial, and then the NDA. And so we're currently raising our Series A, and that will get us through both the IND by the end of 2021, as well as our first in human trial, which should be completed in the second half of 2022. So again, using the FDA's accelerated approval, we're shooting for an NDA late 2024, early 2025 to be followed by commercial launch. So, you know, we know basically what we need to accomplish, and now it's finishing those studies and trials and building out a team of experienced drug developers and regulatory experts that can get Kai-1 onto the market as quickly as possible.
To that end, what are you fundraising, and how will you use that to meet your next major milestone?
So we're currently raising our Series A. SOSV has been kind enough to add in $2 million on top of their IndieBio funding. So they're co-leading our round. We've also raised about $1 million from the Army that will help us complete our IND studies. So got about remaining $7 million out of the $10 million to raise, and we're hoping to do that by the end of this year.
Great. Thank you very much for taking. Go ahead.
I was going to say that will take us through both the IND as well as the completion of the first in human trial, which is our key inflection point.
Of course. I'm so sorry that I cut you off, Damien. Thank you so much for taking time to speak with us today and answer these questions.
Thank you for having me.
If you in our investor community are interested in speaking with Damien to learn more about Kai1 and Cayuga Biotech, please make an appointment at the Calendly link directly below. And in fact, all of our CEOs are ready for you, our investor community, to meet them through that Calendly link where you can directly interact and talk about moving together, working together to forward the next generation of biotechnology. I am now extraordinarily pleased and first of all, we've gotten through our first IndieBio New York inaugural cohort. This is a really wonderful experience. In IndieBio Demo Days, we traditionally invite managing partner of SOSV, Sean O'Sullivan, to say a few words. And I think, Sean, it would be really wonderful to hear your experience working very closely with us in the New York cohort and your thoughts for the future of biotechnology.
Well, thanks to everyone for coming today. Needless to say, this is live, and I don't know if you guys can hear the lawnmower in my neighbor's backyard. It's exactly the wrong time to start, but can you hear me okay?
It's live. Yeah, okay. Sounds great.
So anyway, thanks to everyone for coming today. The year 2020 has shown us how significant and how important biology and science are for our survival and for our society's ability to function. From the pandemic to the forest fires and the floods, it's never been clearer that biology is both an opportunity and a threat for humanity and the planet. So if you want to make a difference in creating more order out of the chaos, you've come to the right place. Science is king here at IndieBio. And as you know, you can't wish science away. It's either your friend or it's an unstoppable force that will mow you down. So companies that IndieBio has backed in past years have already risen to the challenge. SOSV has a portfolio of over 40 companies that are actively fighting COVID already, with testing, antibody therapeutics, small molecule therapeutics, laboratory automation, robotics, disinfecting technologies, medical devices. So these companies are first responders, and they rushed into the burning building of our society in the months of February, March, April, when this thing was all kicking off. And while most of us were forced to work from home. Today, these SOSV startups that pivoted to COVID just 8 months ago are shipping hundreds of millions of dollars of testing solutions and medical equipment. And there are at least 5 of our startups that are now active in clinical trials, all responding to these events in record time and in real time. And none of this would be possible without your investment in these companies. And I want you to think about that, because the companies you're seeing today, some of them obviously have COVID-related applications. And we'd love for you to be involved in these companies for today's problems and for tomorrow's problems. SOSV is the parent VC behind IndieBio, and we've been supporting entrepreneurs that are tackling physical world problems for the past 8 years through IndieBio Hacks and our other accelerators. But we can't do it alone. For every $25 million that we put into IndieBio startups, about $500 million comes in from you. Got to get my finger pointed in the right direction, from you. and from the investors that attend our demo days and follow on into these startups in the years after they graduate this program. So we're all put on this planet to serve. You will do well by investing in IndieBio companies. They're great high growth companies with great scientific discoveries that have commercial viability. But importantly, you'll also create the world that you want to live in, that your children will be growing up in, a healthier, a more sustainable planet of greater abundance and greater equity. So there's a through line between the companies you see today and a better and a more sustainable world. And that through line is your actions, wherever you are. So please sign up to meet with the companies you believe you can help. In many cases, these rounds, they will be oversubscribed, but you can always get to know the companies now, maybe invest in a future round. And there are links below to grab slots of time, with these startups over the next 2 weeks. So, please take the time today to do as Gandhi would advise us, to be the change you want to see in the world. Thanks, all of us, thanks to everyone at IndieBio, San Francisco, New York, at SOSV, all the back office that's all supporting all of this, for helping pull this event together. And please come and join us again tomorrow for IndieBio's San Francisco Demo Day. Thanks a lot for everything. Julie, a wonderful job in leading the presentations today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And thank you. Just as Sean said, we are only halfway through our IndieBio Demo Day event now. So please come tomorrow, same time, almost the same place. It's not quite, but if you look down below, there's also a button that connects you to the San Francisco viewing pages. So you don't have to remember anything more than this little link down below. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. One last word of thanks to all the people who have helped to put this together. Sean and SOSV, thank you. Thank you to all the folks who have helped on the tech side, the ops team at SOSV, as well as the tech team over in San Francisco, Open Cell Media and Reese Votano, who have put together those wonderful films that you saw earlier today. To my team, thank you very much, IndieBio New York. And to you, our audience, thank you for sharing a bit of your day with us today. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Thank you.